I do not.
Oh, here. This you can use as well.
Okay, all right, we're good. We have 8 here, so yes, we definitely have
All right, good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order May 17th, 2025. And we would start with the folks that are joining us virtually. I'll start with Dave, if you just don't mind, just high level overview why you're participating virtually.
I didn't hear what you said. Why am I participating virtually?
Yes.
Because I'm 7 hours ahead in time zone. I'm over.
That's a good reason.
That's it. That's an excellent reason. All right. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. I'm over 60 miles away.
Okay.
There's
All right.
also there's some feedback on the audio. I'm not sure if somebody needs to mute.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day. There's a reverberation at the very beginning on that end.
Zach, go ahead and turn the volume down on your end. So Dave and Tom, we're probably going to turn you down slightly just to see if that corrects the reverb.
Okay. And if it doesn't, please let us know.
Is there a reverb now?
It's already much better.
Oh, excellent.
I just made that up. Good job.
All right. And, I'd like to start the meeting with a moment of silence in honor of Marcus. Okay, thank you. And I'd like, if anyone would like to share, and I'll start, if you have anything you want to share about Mark. Mark was always eager to roll his sleeves up and committed to coming to all the events and working behind the scenes. And as board chair, shares that passion and challenge with us at every meeting and every time he had. So he's definitely missed. And just thinking about his family right now.
He's a good guy. I enjoyed my time with him. Already missed not having him here.
We've had a lot of board members over the years, including all of you, being very encouraging to the staff, and I think Mark exemplified that.
He had a genuine interest in the work of this facility, this institution, all the people who worked here. His curiosity knew no bounds, and that's something I greatly appreciated about him. I learned after he passed that he had been best friends with my best friend growing up in Northern Virginia, and that he continued to come and visit her mother after her father passed and was at her mother's funeral. And so very tight connections, but it just shows that's the kind of person he was. Yeah.
Most of you don't know me, but I'm Noel Boas. I was the first director here, and I met him last, not very long ago at one of the events here. And he glommed onto me, and we ended up talking half an hour. And I don't think I've ever seen a member of the board, of this board, with as much intrinsic interest in what this institution is all about. So it's a definite loss.
All right, thank you. And welcome, Dr. Gomez. We have
Thank
you on the agenda a little later. Thank you. You have the board trustees minutes from our February 1st meeting. I have you had time to review those. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or edits? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. All right, we are going to start with introductions, and the first will be Dr. Colin Van Buren, who has been here 2 to 3 months. So we have deemed that you were the newest hire, and I just look forward to hearing about you and a little bit about your background. And welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. So, like Dr. Clark said, I am Colin Van Buren. I am visiting scholar here at the museum. For my background, I started off at community college, at Illinois Valley Community College, before going on to Western Illinois University for my undergrad. From there, I did my master's at the University of Toronto, and then my PhD as a Gates Cambridge Scholar at the University of Cambridge, where I did my lab work for my PhD at the Museum für Naturkunde in Berlin. I should also note that my master's in Toronto was based at the Royal Ontario Museum, the Paleontology Department. From there, I did a postdoc in Sydney, Australia, at Macquarie University, and then a postdoc at Ohio State before going as a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow, where I was an executive branch fellow at the U.S. Agency for International Development, now of infamy, and then moved from my fellowship to my bureau's front office to work on as a climate youth and inclusion advisor, where I worked on the President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience, the Agriculture Innovation Commission for Climate, and a bunch of food security, climate change programs, but all from a perspective of doing youth inclusion, where our definition of youth was people aged 10 to 29, but sometimes extended to 35, depending on the context. And I learned a lot of awesome things. I was a zoologist, and so with the AAAS, you kind of get placed somewhere, and I think I knew that it wasn't my long-term career, and so I was looking for ways to get back into research, to take the skills that I learned in the government and apply them to addressing questions like, how can we do better at biodiversity conservation? What are our goals here? And also, can we do better at storytelling the ways that biodiversity loss impacts our society? Because we know it does, but it turns out our ability to tell that story is kind of limited by the science that we have. So for a while, I was a postdoc at Northern Arizona University, where I was working on the impacts of livestock grazing in arid and semi-arid rangelands, which is interesting. I would say, my favorite topic. I learned from doing that, and then ended up here. And so currently, kind of finishing up a kind of mix of projects ranging from Australian amphibian biogeography to some of my grazing work, to some new work on beavers and ecosystem services. And looking forward to building and establishing new research projects here in the coming months. Happy to take any questions. That's my overview.
I'd just like to point out we're kindred spirits. He doesn't even know it, because I did my postdoc. I did it in secondary treated wastewater for mosquito breeding, and so I got to don waders and go through wastewater that basically had a solids removed. And
Lovely.
So it wasn't my favorite, but it made me the man I am today.
You're welcome.
All right, we're glad to have you. Thank you for being here. Right, and at this time, I'd like to welcome Dr. Noel Boas, and we're pleased to have you here and look forward to a deep dive on our collection of origins.
Okay, thank you.
While you're preparing, I just noticed we have another board member join online. Lisa, welcome. If you don't mind, just high-level overview providing why you're participating virtually.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I am at home taking care of my mother, who is having some extensive health issues.
We're sorry to hear that, and thank you for being here. Dr. Boaz. Full screen.
Yeah, let's do full screen if we can. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm going to talk today a little bit about orphan collections. We'll begin that with looking at where this museum started. A period of 2 years in which the General Assembly studied the that branch was supposed to be essentially a branch of this institution with curators, adjunct faculty, and so forth, but it failed for a number of reasons. Had to do with very rapid changes in administration of the museum. So there was no formal University of Virginia unit that owned or could take ownership or could be the curatorial repository of those collections. So going back with the help of the Special Collections section of the University of Virginia Library, we found this document from 1877, and I can't point very well with this, but anyway, this is it. This is the actual act of the General Assembly, which is Joint Resolution number 51, which accepted this collection that had at the time been donated by an anonymous donor from New York to the Commonwealth of Virginia. The General Assembly accepted this for Virginia to be located at the University of Virginia. But the important part here is that it was accepted by the General Assembly for Virginia. So to make that clear as to why we were talking about that, in 1989, when the General Assembly established the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and I'll show you in a minute, the mandate of the museum was to serve as the repository of Virginia's natural heritage. So the ownership of those collections that were at the University of Virginia actually reside in Commonwealth of Virginia. The building itself is sort of settled there, so nobody's suggesting that it be moved. And a number of collections are still there at UVA, but without any curatorial oversight. Joe and I have visited there, and they are in the Department of Environmental Sciences, and the Department of Environmental Sciences has no museological expertise, and they would be very happy to have that, we think. Okay, so I said the museum was closed in 1948, 49, and most of the collections were put into storage. This was based on influx of students after World War II, and that building essentially was the mastodon there, or the mammoth there, was broken up, and our former colleague, Dr. Richard Hoffman, in 1949 was a student at the University of Virginia, and he observed the buildings and ground crew breaking up the mammoth with sledgehammers.
Oh, God.
And one of its eyes, its two eyes popped out. One of them was lost. Another one was found rolling down the hill, because if you've been there, there's a hill right there that way the Brooks Museum is. And a student ran and caught it. So Richard said, a student caught one of the eyes of the mammoth. And believe it or not, in some year after that, we had a letter from some individual in Roanoke that said, I have the eye of the mammoth. So we never followed it up. But anyway, this whole history is very interesting, and I won't go into it, and I'll talk too long if I do. But the collection was essentially put together by Henry Ward, a professor at the University of Rochester, personally selected by Lewis Brooks. Lewis Brooks was a woolen manufacturer in Rochester, New York, and he had been influenced by a number of philanthropists, including George Peabody and William Corcoran. And if you've ever been around any academic places, there's a Peabody Hall and a Corcoran Gallery and a Corcoran professorship all over the place. So these were the people that Brooks sort of wanted to hobnob with, and that's where he gave large donations of natural history museums, which at the time were considered, the state of the art in terms of liberal education, to both Washington Lee University and to the University of Virginia. And so that's where they came from. And Ward had gone all over the world, and the collections are really quite significant. In fact, a number of the specimens out here in the hall are from that original collection made by Ward. So going back to Dr. Mitchell, the university Provost's office supported his signature of the specimens to come here. And we immediately were able to get a tractor trailer. In fact, we had 2 tractor trailers donated by a local Martinsville corporation to come up. And this is one from Toltex with 2 of our staff there at the old air hangar, and basically everything was moved out of there. We have it all photographically recorded. The lower picture is myself and the mayor of Martinsville on the left, and a state senator, well, actually a U.S. senator from Virginia on the right, who happened to be in town. And this was unloading the specimens from that collection. Now, on the right is a timeline. Believe it or not, it's an abbreviated timeline of where these collections came from, what happened to them, because they came on temporary loan. That was confirmed by the University of Virginia and by the institution here. But after I had left at the end of 1989 to go back into academia, there were a series of directors, none of whom stayed more than a year or a few months, until really Mr. Getty came in as director about 2006, I think, something like that. But in that interim period, I'm sorry, when was
It was 2000. Mr. Getty started in 2002.
2002.
It says 2004.
Okay, it's on there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was important because there was some stabilization at that point, and things got to be sort of more normalized. But by that time, we unfortunately had lost both university branches of the museum, and very unfortunately, much of those collections that had been brought down here very carefully and had been maintained and in fact renovated and put on exhibit in a number of cases were returned. And they were returned in a helter-skelter manner. I was only able to figure this out by going through a detailed review of all the minutes of the Board of Trustees. So we ended up with a situation in which, well, let me first go to this. In 1989, this section of the Code of Virginia was established, creating the museum. I'm sure you've all looked at this, with these 6 fundamental purposes. And the part that is probably most relevant to us today is in point 5, which is to ensure a permanent repository of our natural heritage. It's also important that it says in various places that in point 1 here, that all the elements of natural history found in Virginia, other parts of the United States, and the world are the purview of this museum. So that's going to play into an important role in a minute. And I have to point out to this current director here, who you all know and love, has been an absolutely godsend to this institution, as I'm sure you all know. This is what the collections look like in the basement of the astronomy building, old astronomy building, UVA. From there, they're removed to Rouse Hall, the old ROTC hall at UVA. And this was recorded by our collections manager at the time, Dr. Elizabeth Moore, who then became curator of archaeology and now a state archaeologist. So she was there to try to figure out what happened to those collections, why were they moved back there, what were their conditions, and their conditions were abysmal. So we then established some meetings with the Department of Environmental Sciences. Dr. Howie Epstein was the chairman at the time and was very helpful with us. And we found out and got references to the individuals who had overseen this situation because UVA was going to renovate this building. So these had to be disposed of. So unfortunately, disposed of can mean a number of things with collections. It can mean going to a dumpster, it can mean finding another museum, or it can mean just being donated out to whoever wants to take them. So actually, that history is better than we had anticipated. So Dr. Tom Biggs, who was an adjunct professor at environmental sciences, had overseen it, and he met with us a number of times. We have a whole list of what he had gone through and established was there. Anything that was a mammalian, vertebrate fossil, invertebrate fossil, important ward cast, but particularly the vast rock and mineral collection was retained. And he very fortunately contacted the Division of Geology and Mineral Resources, part of the Virginia Department of Energy, and they were quite willing to take the bulk of those collections, which were really most of what was very valuable. And so they are now at the Charlottesville office of the Department of Energy, and they don't have enough space for all of it, so part of it is at the Department of Forestry. So again, we have met with the Virginia State geologist, Matt Heller, very, very collegial director of that whole facility there. They have a wonderful facility for demonstrating a lot of the collections that are there, but they have most of them in a warehouse for storage. So that particular collection falls under the mandate of the Department or the Division of Geology and Mineral Resources. But the problem with that is that their mandate is only for Virginia. So if at some point some exigency were to rear its head, that more space were needed or the Department of Forestry needed that extra space, those excess collections, which are primarily international and are fossil related, invertebrate fossil related, would have to be done away with. But interestingly, that also includes the very important collection that's been largely ignored, which are photomicrographs of Mesozoic paleoflora studied by the first professor of natural history at the Brooks Museum. And those are, he did 3 monographs for the U.S. Geological Survey on the Mesozoic flora of Virginia, which ties in very nicely what this museum does in terms of paleoenvironment for dinosaurs. And so there's a lot that's there, and that would be a shame if it went to seed. So we need to do something about that, I would submit.
Hey, no, we're running a little long, so we have to wrap up.
I know, I always do this. So I'm on the last slide. So this is the sort of summary, and I've gone over this with Jeff. He can expand on this, but there are 3 problems here. The 2 first problems that are highlighted here are fairly straightforward. There is no one that's really in disagreement, but the board has to decide whether some action should be taken. But this would be, the first one would be essentially to say, okay, the state has vested in the Virginia Museum of Natural History the curatorship, ownership, repository responsibilities for these rocks and minerals that are currently at the Department of Energy. And the current memorandum of agreement they have is with the University of Virginia. That needs to be updated because there is no entity at the University of Virginia that's able to take that responsibility on. Number 2 is with the University of Virginia Department of Environmental Sciences, because if you go and visit Clark Hall, which is the old law school at UVA, there are a number of natural history specimens that come from the Brooks Museum that are on display, but they are not well curated. They're not well taken care of. They're handwritten labels. Some things have fallen over. There's a stalagmite that came to this museum originally from the old State Museum, which was in Richmond, which closed in 1838. But it was still, there were still collections there for a while. That eventually went to UVA, came here, and then went back. That's still in Clark Hall. So a memorandum with environmental sciences would be relevant. And then finally, this is a different problem, and we won't go into a lot of this, but this is a discussion needs to be had with the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, who runs Monticello, because a number of the collections from the Brooks Museum went to Monticello on loan between the late 1940s and 1960, and they include specimens from the Lewis and Clark expedition, as well as fossils that actually did not go back from here and are still here, that we are pretty convinced were excavated by William Clark in 1807 for Thomas Jefferson at Big Bone Lake, Kentucky. So we're doing a really detailed study on that, and with the university, with the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History, and with the support of the university. But again, Monticello has an agreement with the University of Virginia, and that goes back to the library, Thomas Jefferson's library, that went to the university in 1824 at Jefferson's death, but so did the fossils. And so the fossils should not be handled by the library of UVA. They are really part of the Virginia natural heritage that should be covered by VMNH. So with that, I'll be quiet and I can answer any questions.
Has the history of the museum, what you've laid out leading up to the museum, has that been published, or is that all things that you've pieced together?
No, we've been working on the history of the museum for the last 2 years here. And so we are looking at, it's evolved into 2 different volumes. So one volume we've talked about will be a publication, hopefully this year, which is the 40th anniversary of the opening of the museum, 1985. And that will be more like a coffee table book with photographs and some general aspects to it. The history of the museum is a much more scholarly work, and how that will actually come about is still up in the air. But it is important, I think, to write all this down, because it's a very informative sort of journey that the museum went through. And in fact, Joe was saying the other day that he's surprised the museum is still here. But it's wonderful it is, and it survived some difficult times. But a lot of those mistakes might be instructive to anyone else that is trying to start a museum like this.
Well, and I think laying out this history as you've done also strengthens our position going forward in justifying expansion space and some of other long-term physical projects in order to house these collections. And frankly, I personally did not know about these collections outside the museum's walls, so this is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I just visited for the first time. When did we go up there? It was last fall, I think.
Well, last spring, actually, March.
So about a year.
Yeah, a year ago, and and the interesting thing was when they first came here, we had boxes that had on the side old whiskey boxes that had on the side Tom's Buns written on them. And when I was an undergraduate, we had a lab in the basement of Brooks Hall, because Brooks Hall at that time changed from Brooks Museum to Brooks Hall. And we had a sedimentology lab in the basement. And back under the eaves of the basement, where it was still dirt, there were these boxes. And then we saw, and they said, oh, those are Thomas Jefferson's mammoth bones. And sure enough, when they came down here, they were the same boxes. They had Tom's bones. And so the photograph of us taking the mastodons, or we didn't know if it was mastodon mammoths. We've been working with Adam Pritchard, and we've pretty much confirmed that it's from one individual, and it's one individual mammoth. Joe also helped me connect with Glenn Storrs at the Cincinnati Museum, and he's actually worked at Big Bone Lick, and they have a wonderful collection at the Cincinnati Museum. So I've been there twice and worked with them, and it's a very interesting story. And I think that it starts the early history. Those are the oldest collections in terms of historical collections that we have in this entire museum. So even in that sense, it's historically interesting to know.
Definitely. Well, I would like to follow up on this. I think this is fascinating. And any way that we can make this information available sooner than later to help tell our story as we go along, I think that would be a tremendous asset to our work. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm certainly willing to work on it. I've got some other projects that are competing, but I would give this a high priority. I'd love to see it happen.
If it's any consolation, Washington and Lee is struggling right now with the word collection.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know the Washington Lee thing?
Yeah.
I've been to Washington Lee. It's a fascinating history there too.
It is.
And Robert E. Lee, the president of Washington College, was actually instrumental in getting these initial donations made. So, and actually, many of the collections there are in better condition than our collections here from our collection.
Right.
So, there could be an interesting conversation about that too. Yeah.
Boaz, thank you so much for sharing. We could take a whole day and learn, and it's certainly important as part of being a museum of natural history to understand our own history and ensure its preservation. So thank you for your efforts there. And anything we can do to support that, we certainly will.
It's my pleasure. I'm sorry. I'd love to stay for the rest of the meeting because I was invited to stay, but I've got to get to Washington this evening. We have a meeting at the Explorers Club, and so I'm on the board there.
Safe travels.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Noel.
All right. So as I'm not sure if you are aware, we talked about this some, but we do have several board trustees rolling off. Their terms have ended or soon ending. We will be recognizing them later in the meeting. But at this point in time, there are 5 seats that are going to become available on the trustees. There's 15 total, and 5 will become available this June. And so it's important for us to recruit and to think about truly what Dr. Boaz shared with the Code of Virginia and our responsibility as a state museum. Later in the meeting, we're going to talk about a strategic plan that we will be approving in the coming months. And there's a section just about board and our involvement with fundraising, our involvement with supporting the museum, our involvement with policy, with advocacy, and with the General Assembly. And so it's really important for us to think of who else should be on this team, and what assets we bring collectively, but what assets would we like to add. And so that will be a future discussion, but it's just really important for us. And I don't know if I do want to open it up, and not for particular people, but as just in your time here, whether it's new or 10, 15 years, if there are any specific areas that you think we should look for. So just qualities or areas of expertise that maybe we want to add to.
Joe, I'm sorry.
Well, I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to jump in, and one of the other criteria that I might think about is geographic diversity. I was thinking that too. Because we are the Virginia Museum.
This is more of a process question, but do we have much of a say when it comes to recruitment, or do we have a pipeline of potential board members, or does anybody have any sway with the governor's office? I kind of don't know how all this works.
So you can self-nominate or you can nominate someone. And if you nominate someone, they ask you to upload a CV, so you can't just anonymously nominate someone, really. But that goes into a pool, and in some cases, the governors have drawn on that pool. In other cases, I don't have any idea as to where the names came from, as far as nominations. So I don't know that part of the process. But anybody that you think should be at least considered can either self-nominate or give you a resume and you can nominate them at the webpage of the Secretary of Appointments.
Joe, we talked this briefly yesterday, but the people who have submitted their information but weren't considered for the latest round, does their information remain in that pool?
Yes, so let's just say hypothetically this governor does not use anyone in that pool, that would remain until the next administration.
Is there a way of getting those people back in front, back at the top to indicate that they're actively interested in this latest round of vacancies?
I'm unaware of a way to do that. My recommendation would be to go to your local delegate and ask them to put in a good word.
Okay.
Or even reach out to the Secretary of Appointments directly.
Okay. Because they did select, like I say, I tried to be strategic this time. I think it would be great to have someone with just general museum experience. We have Dr. Dave Firth as a result of that. And then I was also looking for education experience and also media experience. And I think we would do well. We've got a lot of educators here that come at it from different angles, which is fantastic. I'd love to see someone with media connections and experience to help present the museum to the state.
And at the same time, too, what we'll do is we have a meeting with the two Deputy Secretary of Education and the Communications Director or whatever for the Secretary's office on Tuesday, and we can bring that up, that there are people who've been submitted.
That would be great.
With this administration, it's been done differently in that the Deputy Secretaries have been handling that communication between us and the Office of Appointments, so they would be the ones to go to.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Okay.
And as Joe mentioned, the important piece is that folks are in that, have submitted their application or we nominated them. Because if they are not there, then they're not going to be selected. So we need to just really think about that strategically.
Well, I'll reach out to these two folks that I know have applied and see if they're still interested. And if they are, do what I can to get them on front and center in the latest round.
The online platform, they would already have created their application online, and I would just advise they resubmit to just double check and make sure everything's accurate.
All right.
Do we have any sense of whether or not any of these vacancies will be filled before the next meeting? And then how does that affect quorum, things like that? Yeah.
Mathematics.
Yeah.
So if we're down to 10, now, two things. If we're down to 10, that means that you have to have 6 present to have a quorum. However, if I'm not mistaken, as I've been told in the past, if your seat, like for instance, Cord, I'll use you as an example. If your seat is not filled, you are obligated. I don't know what that means, but you are obligated to continue in that seat until it's filled.
I think that was for officers, not necessarily for.
No, I wasn't talking specifically about officers, but that was something that was conveyed to me some years back. So maybe it's something you need to confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That was the case for a bit. We had several trustees that remained because the seat had not been.
Right.
Yes.
So, but for timeline, it's not just this governor; it's been all governors. There's no real rhyme or reason. There probably is. There's no rhyme or reason that I'm aware of for the timeline for filling the seats.
I just don't recall, at least on my time, 5 spots.
No. Yeah. No, it has everything to do with a number of circumstances that have just kind of come to a confluence, unfortunately.
My observation is oftentimes an outgoing governor. It's kind of like his last hurrah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And also with regards to board just responsibilities, you have an envelope at your seat. You had this last meeting as well. It's been updated. This includes if you're a member, and also your giving to the museum. It's important as we look at grants and opportunities. Often the question, a first question that's asked is, does your board give? Is it 100% giving? It's really hard to request something if we ourselves, who know all about what's going on here, are donors or members. And so it's also possible your membership is expired and you didn't realize it, or you made a donation and thought that was membership included and it might not have. So you can do this online, or you can stop by the office on the way out and just double check. But this again is another piece, just so you're aware. And they're also at the bottom, the next festival and some other opportunities. Jennifer, also in our packet, the last page, page 129, that is the last page. There's a nice summary of all the things coming up the rest of the year, just to mark your calendar, because we also know, as shared earlier about Mark, giving is not just from our back pocket, but really rolling up our sleeves and giving them time and being supportive of different events here. And then sorry, I also wanted to mention if there is an online option to give monthly as well, in lieu of giving a one-time donation. It could just be something that recurs if that's more convenient or works better. Okay, Lauren, our current electronic meeting policy, and we need to have that updated.
Yes, so for the electronic meeting policy, I think you can see it in the agenda. So we added in, so you'll have a current policy, but in the 2024 General Assembly session, there was an update to the electronic meeting provisions of the Virginia FOIA. So we just kind of went through the policy and kind of incorporated those updates in, and then also brought in some of the code language that's been in the specific area. So just to give you all a quick high level overview, there's two situations with remote with electronic meetings. So the first is if it's remote participation, which is like what's happening right now. So where you have a quorum physically present in the room, then members are able to participate remotely as long as they meet one of the four conditions outlined in the code. So that was like if you live farther than 60 miles away, or you have a medical condition, or have a family member with a medical condition, that you're a caregiver, for a person with a disability, or if there is an option for a personal matter, but there's a limit on that. You can only use it, 2 times per calendar year, up to 25% of the meetings. So that's kind of the first scenario. I will mention one update that was made in 2024 is if you're a person with a disability or a caregiver for a person with a disability, then you can count toward the physical quorum even if you're participating remotely. And so that's just something to keep in mind for both the full board meeting and for committee meetings as well. And if should you not be able to have a quorum in the room, it's generally someone members can participate or can attend online but not actually participate. And then the second scenario is for all virtual meetings, where everyone's kind of meeting on Zoom. And I didn't really, I ended up just kind of adding in the language from the code. I think it sometimes can be helpful just to have it in your policy so you can, make sure you're seeing all the different requirements. But two kind of quick call outs on that, or I guess kind of the main call out on that was one of the updates they made this year, that a public body cannot convene an all virtual meeting more than 2 times per calendar year, 50% of the meetings held per calendar year, rounded up to the next number, whichever is greater. That used to be 25%, so they've increased that, and it cannot be held consecutively with another meeting. So just keeping that in mind in the timing and sequencing of that.
Quick question about number 9.
Yes.
Does that also hold for committee meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
And the committee is, I put in there that the policy kind of, and the, would apply to the board and to committees as well. So, And then, the policy kind of outlines kind of the request approval process. And then in section D, there is a separate section for state of emergency meetings, in which case there's a different provision in the code for that, for electronic meetings. And then finally, in section E, there's mentions education and compliance. And one important thing to note in here is that now, in order to use remote participation or all virtual meetings, the code requires that a board at least once annually adopts an electronic meeting policy by recorded vote at a public meeting. So we just need to have, look at the policy each year and have a vote on it. Does anyone have any questions?
Recorded vote, is that different than a roll call vote, or is it just going to just be ayes and nays go around?
Sure. I think it's by normal vote.
I just felt like during the pandemic we were doing a lot of those roll call votes, and we haven't been doing them as much.
And I was going to say that's more stringent than the ayes or nays. So if you're uncertain, why don't we do more stringent? Am I correct in my assessment?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I mean,
I think a roll call vote is at a higher level than ayes and nays. So should we do that to adopt this at this meeting? Since we have a quorum?
I agree.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the new electronic meeting policy?
Since I spoke, I'll approve it.
Second?
All right. Any further discussion? All right. So we're going to have a roll call vote.
Sorry, I'm adding new work for somebody that's not expecting it.
That's fine.
Okay, Ms. Kathy Hinkle.
Oh, yes.
Aye. Sanford, Dr. Carol Nash,
Approved.
Dr. Melanie Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Ann Burnett,
Aye.
Dr. Art Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Gordon Hoffman.
Aye.
Ms. Lauren Hall.
Aye.
And we would do the votes online as well. Okay, Dr. Tom Benzing, do you approve?
Yeah, and I did have a question about voting online, whether that requires a motion, but
You're fine. You're fine. We'll give you an explanation, but you're fine. Dr. David Firth?
Aye.
I think it's complete.
Thank you.
Tom's question?
yes, yes, it doesn't affect the voting rights to participate if you're participating through remote participation.
As long as there's
As long
quorum.
as there's a quorum present.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Jonathan.
Sure. So just take the opportunity to thank everybody that participated in the letter writing campaign on behalf of Waynesboro. There'll be probably 2 more opportunities for a concerted effort to get the word to the Secretary of Education on that item. No direct reference to the letters, of course, but our budget analyst got a nice call from her. It kind of has the budget process wrapping up, thanking us for our understanding and outlining that she appreciated the variety of stakeholders that we had, and she look forward to working with us in the future. So that was more than I expected, and I do really appreciate it from everybody.
And is there anything else we can do?
So we'll be in touch. The timing is kind of, so we were working through the last session, the last budget from the governor for the amendments, and then now we're waiting on the cues for the new budget development session. So I'd say September, October, we'll get the pens out again and start writing. Of course, you can always contact your delegate and your legislator, and keeping us top of mind is important.
Right. Okay. And that goes to Ann's point earlier about being diverse geographically. We're able to touch more legislators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As chair of the nominating committee, I presented a slate of officers in the February meeting. At that time, there was 1 vacancy of treasurer. There is, unfortunately, the other members of the committee are not participating today available. So as awkward as this is, I'm the only person to make this nomination. So
Motion. Second?
if anyone else will step up, you can discuss that right now. All right, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or any? Unapproved. All right. And for the slate of officers, these will be one by one. So this creates a vacancy as vice chair. And so I will accept any nominations or self-nominations from the floor. And I'd like to nominate, I'd like to nominate Mr. Carter.
And just so she doesn't have to say this, Lisa did volunteer and unfortunately had to leave at 10:50 for another commitment.
So
Yeah,
do I
nomination.
move on that?
Yeah.
As you suggested, I move that we have Lisa Carter as the vice chair.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. For treasurer, again, this is open. Self-nominations or nominations. I did have a conversation with Will Clements, who is a new trustee, but also very, his background and experience is quite suited
He's a
for.
banker, right?
Yes, he's a
Yeah.
banker. This goes back to Carter Bank and Trust, perchance. No,
No, I'm not gonna recall.
I don't recall that. No, it's not.
Just curious.
I
It's a
don't-
former banker.
Okay. So, but he is a banker, and he did agree that he would serve. So I'd like to nominate Will Clements. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any other nominations? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Bank of Southside Virginia.
That's it. Sorry, I was getting all confused. Yeah. It's a family run thing.
And also, like to see if there's a motion to approve Lauren Woods Hall as secretary.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Great, court.
Joe's gonna handle this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to our CFO to start with, and I will jump in as appropriate.
So just kind of running through budget-wise, third quarter shaped up pretty well for us. You guys know admissions kind of follows the festivals that we throw. So run a little bit behind there, but nothing out of the ordinary. All other revenues look really good. We're looking at another record year for education, of course. Christy's amazing. Restricted gifts, you guys will see that pop up from the foundation as the pavilion has kind of entered that last phase. So if you guys recall, that project is 50% maintenance reserve for the concrete pad and stairs, and then 50% for the other portion, the canopy and the rest. So billing wise, money will be brought over from the foundation to an O2 account. That O2 account will be expended to cover those most recent invoices. Happy to say that the billing is well on its way to being wrapped up. So, let's see. Good. Jumping down to expenses, salaries are in line with third quarter, just a tick above. Then go to contractual services. Obviously, it's a high number. Again, that was from where we pushed a lot of the work to be done on the pavilion over from one fiscal year to the next. Jumping down to the core staff training, excellent. Everybody's participating there. Most curators are doing service, and they leverage the funds both in the foundation and the museum and their own grant work to really utilize. So that's a multiplier. Those funds there that the foundation provides. Then jump down to the story of the day, utilities. Happy to go into that in detail. or probably just say at a higher level. Looking at four variables there, we got the weather, we have the age of the building, of course, and then we have the rates from the city market. Then we have, of course, so there's four variables, three of which we can't control, one of which we can, which is ourselves, maintenance on the building, setting. My office 2 degrees higher, Joe's office 2 degrees colder. Right now we have both the weather and the age of the building working against us. So we're working to define a plan to address those issues. So it's VFDs, which are variable fan drives, and AHUs, also related to the fan drives, just kind of aging out of the building. So we're seeing them pick up there.
And we are using maintenance reserve. We changed out some of those during the energy savings or ESCO project, but then we've identified back in January another one went bad. So we're going to be proactive, use maintenance reserve, and actually replace them all so they're all new, because that just indicates that others are going to go out as well.
So working on through that, and then organizational memberships, you'll see it's high. That really is just tied to the AAM reaccreditation. So the funding there goes to their stay, and we just lump that into that accounting bucket. We thought it was most appropriate to when we had a team visit, dinners and hotel reservations, and then we'll be catching the invoice for their flights here soon. Just kind of rolling it into that bucket. We had hoped the state would provide. When we were approving this budget, when you guys were approving this budget, we hoped the state would provide additional funding to support that, and we just fell a little shy of getting that support. So it just kind of rolls into that account. Looks a little high. Like I said, I think this year is on track. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And just so everyone knows, because it's going to be a little tight because we're added utilities expenses. This is a lot of fun, but from here on out for the rest of the fiscal year, I'm personally approving all purchases, and some of them we decide it's not really necessary, or maybe it's something the foundation can help us with, or we defer it to next year. All right, so just to ensure that we stay within our responsibilities of having a balanced budget.
And at this point, you only got what, another month and a half?
Yeah. We don't expect it to be a problem. We just need to keep an eye on it.
Thank you. The next item, fiscal year 2026 budget presentation.
Yes, so as we spoke, really the big change to the fiscal 2026 is the increase in utilities. So there's not a lot of change year over year because it's the second year of the biennial budget. So that is the large change. The exciting, better news is the $73,000 we got from amendments put forth by our delegates to help roughly 11 staff members. So increases in wages for those staff members. So education staffing and then curatorial assistant staffing all benefit from those funds. So.
And I want to thank Delegate Phillips and Senator Stanley for ensuring that those budget amendments went through.
Just everything else is in line there. I think we need just a standard vote to approve us moving forward.
Is there a motion to approve?
So
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the 2026 budget? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And the next item, the new pricing proposal.
So just moving forward with that, if you guys, just economic headwinds, general uncertainty. If you guys haven't checked Zillow for Northern Virginia, I think it's a record number of homes on the market.
Yep.
That is the direct tax base that we pulled from to support the museum. So again, there's a lot of variables, much like HVAC and utilities, several variables with revenues. That being one which we can control, of course, are our rates. And trying to further support for one full-time employee, we have decided that we feel like it's necessary to get ahead of the selling of the homes in Northern Virginia by going ahead and producing higher rates going forward this fiscal year. Some come online as soon as I guess the vote will take place, and then July 1st, increase emissions, and then some throughout the year and I think membership, et cetera, will be around the beginning of the new calendar year.
And Christy, there are some that we're going to tactfully defer, correct?
Yes.
So that, for instance, when she's running summer camps and people have already signed up for summer camps, we're not going to be increasing rates in the middle of that. So we'll raise all these at the appropriate time.
So fiscal year 26, you'll see increases, and then full implementation fiscal year 27.
I don't recall the last time the fees were raised.
Before pandemic. Okay. And we never had a special festival admission. We decided we're going to because we, of course, put a lot of extra expense and a lot of extra effort into those events. And frankly said, they're still a bargain when we compare them to other similar events, even on the south side.
So I also believe this might require action by the board, just to vote of support for the increasing rates of the next fiscal year.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the new pricing proposal.
I second that.
Any further discussion?
Is this built into the budget at all?
So with the variables and the way it comes online, we decided to, it's really a question of elasticity of demand as far as this market, as we are kind of an island to ourselves.
It's probably prudent actually not to include it. So
appreciate those words.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, we'll brief here as various committees been covering a lot of museum operations. I will start with our AAM update. Trying to keep in communication about this. We did have our site visit back in March. I've got word they have submitted their reports. I will say that there were really no negatives discussed during, or cautionary tales discussed during the exit interview with me. However, the write-ups, from my experience, often will have those, and that's of course why we're waiting to the end of the year to produce a strategic plan in case those cautionary tales or suggestions and so forth can influence those. So the reaccreditation commission meets in June, and we'll find out shortly thereafter. So a letter will be mailed directly to Melanie for that. So I want to thank everyone from both the foundation board and the board of trustees who participated in the dinners, the meetings, the tour of Douglas Avenue, and so forth. And one thing I thought was real nice that Jonathan set up was that, Douglas is a big project, and it's a project in progress. And a lot of times museums defer going for reaccreditation in the middle of a big project. I really did not want to do that. So one thing that really helped us was Jonathan lined up the architect to actually be the one to give the tour. And it showed basically this is an active project. You've got identified funds to move forward. He was the one to explain it, not us. I thought that it gave it a little more credibility.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the strategic plan and these various committees and so forth. So I think Jennifer sent out the most recent one a few days ago. We have been able to really narrow down the topics that we'll be covering in the new strategic plan. And based upon committee work, we're going to be doing some further massaging of a lot of these. I don't, unless you want me to, I don't really want to sit here and go through each bullet point or whatever, but I also want to point out that this is not a strategic plan. It's a step towards a strategic plan. So one thing I think we can do is as we go through the agenda and the committee reports, I think we'll see some of these reflected in there. So are you okay with me taking that tact rather than mechanically go through all the bullet points? Mm-hmm. Unless there's any particular bullet point anyone wants to call out before we proceed on. Okay, a couple of other things for you. Well, actually, that's mainly it from the standpoint that everything else I have here that I've reported on in committees will be reported out in the committee report. I just want to say that getting back to Jonathan's comment that we got the increased salary, particularly for Christie's team. She has dealt with a revolving door, but no fault of hers. It was really just resources, and I really I have high hopes it's going to create some stability because Annabelle Seacrest, who's joined the team, has complemented Jordan Bremen very well. So now Christy has a full house over there. And I think that's going to give us a lot of stability. And when you have that stability, I really think that that inspires the staff to be creative. And I know on Ryan's side, advancement with the exhibits program, I think you're going to see over time a lot of novel improvements to the museum. In fact, we've already been doing some of that work here and there. So if you get a chance to do a lap around, I encourage that. So the new dinosaur exhibit looks great. You all remember the wonderful diorama of the lions and the Cape Buffalo. Well, we've added some better, finally, we've added some better interpretation to that. These things take time, right? And a much better look at, we always say temporary solutions become permanent problems. And that's how it was using the mix and match plexiglass around that diorama. It's no longer that way. But Ryan's been pushing these projects forward, especially with the team we have is eager to get to that. So yeah. So what I'm going to do at this point is just go ahead and pass the baton on to Ryan to go through our advancement report that you have in your packet.
And I only have one question.
Yes.
When will, I know the Education Pavilion slated to finish this month.
Yes.
When is its grand opening, so to speak?
Ryan, why don't you jump in? He's the man with the plan.
All right.
So the pavilion work is, we've got a very specific schedule coming up. So one of the key things is the Pelagornis large bird will be hung the week of May 25th through 29th. But the first public opening use of the pavilion will be Dino Festival in July. It'll be done before then. It'll be sort of an informal soft opening. Visitors will be able to access it. It's going to be our first big celebration, and it's actually part of the Dino Festival promotions. Join us at Dino Festival while also celebrating first.
Excellent. That's a wonderful idea.
Not to say we can't do more events to celebrate the opening. That's going to be the first big public.
Okay.
And we need to reconfirm with the chamber. They volunteered to do a ribbon cutting at Dino Fest, so we just need to reconfirm that.
I think that's a good idea.
She use a raptor claw.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, and I wanted to come back to the revised emergency action plan.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. There's actually two documents that were submitted for your approval. This comes straight from AAM. They wanted us to kind of revise the format of our ethics document just to fit with their standards. And so the team did put that together. The second, more significantly, back in 2010, when we received reaccreditation last, we submitted our COOP plan. That is the continuation of operation plan that the state makes us have this update on a regular basis and have available. However, because it is specific to Virginia, AAM asked us to have a more standard document to complement that. And so they gave us some sample documents. If I'm not mistaken, I might have this slide off, but we actually took the one produced by the University of Arkansas and changed some of it to match our operations, but we're able to use their graphics and so forth. And Tim King and Jennifer Whitlow put a lot of effort to get that turned around expeditiously, and so that made it to the hands of the visiting committee and so forth. But it would be nice, especially in advance of the decision being made by the Accreditation Commission, if the board would approve both of those documents.
Well, I'd like to move that we approve the emergency action plan. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And thank you for your edits on that. We did go through with fine tooth comb.
Yes, thank you.
Any opposed? All right, so that's approved. Is there a motion to approve the revised code of ethics?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Actually, two.
Okay.
Under governance, I think it's line 7. It says the director of the museum and prescribes his duty. Should that be just his, or should it be more neutral?
We can make that neutral, Dave. Thank you. That is probably just a holdover from the old documents.
Okay, and the second comment is under collections, item 6. It says at the end, follow all applicable state and federal laws with regard to their specific discipline. What about international?
Art, well, that's what we were dealing with. What do you mean art? I agree, that should be in there. That was as I recall, that's what we went through with the Guatemalan artifacts. So yeah, that definitely include that language.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Dave. We'll edit it to include those. And if you just switch the motion to.
Thanks, Dave.
Sure.
So I move that we approve it with the edits.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I assume we'll all need to complete one of these at a future meeting or between meetings or something. Is that right? We'll need to all submit one of these now that it's approved.
Like someone.
No, that's a different. That's a different document. This
That's a
policy.
state one.
Yeah.
Okay. Who signs it then? Because it's at the bottom of it. But there's a signature page.
I would have to do that on my memory refresh here. Can you go up to the top of the page? Yeah, that's going to be a detail I have to. Yeah, I know. Offhand, I don't know. Well, that's the agree. Yeah, we can get that. We can get that to all.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually boilerplate. We can kind of do this stuff once a year. Anyways.
Exactly. So it'll complement what you've gotten in the past. All right. Thank you.
And Dave, thank you for those suggestions. Just as a reminder, there is a section within the Code of Virginia, and you have to scroll to see all of our board duties. So as we approve things, we are approving them as they're stated. So it's important to always read content and provide feedback. All right, Ryan.
Sure. So just to reference sort of the high points, you've all got a copy of the report. Start on page 1. Visitations up this time over last year, so through the third quarter. We're not seeing a lot of spikes and drops, which is good. Steady progress post-pandemic. So continuing on with general visitation and also of course education programs and festivals as well. So good news there. Skipping to page 2, one of the most important things, endowment. So we've got a chart here. This is through the third quarter again. So this is historically each third quarter snapshot. You can see we're up well over last third quarter. A few things have happened in the world since last year. But that's part of it. If we look at it every day or every hour, it's going to just sheer panic. So this March 31st is up 13.7% over last year. So that's almost 14% growth. Even from March, looking at December to March, it's 3.2% growth. So it is growing. There was a slight drop after March 31st, but it's rebounded based on recent feedback from our investment manager. So good news there. We've got really strong balance of risk and stability, and so we're seeing really good management. So we'll keep an eye on it, of course. On page 3, number of gifts. So we look at not only the number of dollars coming in, but the number of gifts. So that's everything from memberships and annual fund gifts all the way to corporate partnerships and larger grants. So we're on track to, last year was a record through the third quarter. So we're right on track, either be a record year this year or close to it. So that's good. We want to get the word out about different ways people can give, whether it's, again, annual fund gifts, memberships, all the way to plan gifts, corporate partnerships, and grants. Same page, number of memberships. So obviously that's a huge part of what we do. We're up about 7% over last year. So that's very cyclical. It depends on renewals and also like memberships at festivals. So we sell with our staff do a good job upselling people. Oftentimes it's cheaper to get an annual membership at a festival if you have a larger family than it is to just pay that day. So our staff do a good job doing the quick math, and people are suspicious. We can't believe it. How can it be cheaper? But it's and with that we have a reciprocal membership program through Association of Science and Technology Centers. So that's other participating museums members get free admission to VMNH, and our members get free admission there. That's a huge selling point as well. So folks do take advantage of it. We see a lot of folks coming from North Carolina, from Northern Virginia to our festivals with their different memberships from other institutions. That's always great to see. Skipping to page 5, definitely we'll go over any of this additionally. Page 5 highlights our Museums for All program. So we've talked about it a lot, but it is very important. It's the program that provides free admission to folks that show their EBT card, individuals and families. So for the third quarter, we saw 8.1% of our overall visitation came in through that program. So that's slightly higher than the third quarter average over year. So good news there. Not only at festivals, but generally every day people take advantage of that. So we want to continue that. We have corporate underwriting for that. So Hooker Furnishings, Carter Bank and Trust, and then the local community foundation generously provide support for that. And they love it. They're happy to do it as well. It's a great program. Overall, we've got several grants, partnerships in the works, everything from working with curators, educators, exhibits across the board, looking at various grants partnerships. One of the recent grants that we submitted is for the VA250 program. So it's through the Virginia Tourism Corporation. It's a specialized grant opportunity for VA250. So that's been submitted. We'll find out in mid-June, but it will hopefully provide funding for exhibit, a special publication, and then some public events that we have during 2026. So we asked for 10,000, which is the most they offer. So the good thing about that one, normally they provide cash, or they require a cash match. This one they allow in-kind matching, so that's good. That's because we have plenty of labor to offer up. Yeah, and just overall, I think upcoming festival, Dinah Festival, July 25th and 26th, which will feature a really exciting, more than 50% real mammoth. So it's a full skeleton mammoth, partly cast, but over 50% of it is real fossil. So that's I don't even know where the opportunity came up. It was just came up, and so it's currently at the Maryland Natural History Society. So we have a team going up actually Monday and Tuesday to go up there and pick it up.
So this one has eyes.
Yeah, it's really animatronic. No, the team's going up. Yeah, it'll be here for sure by Wednesday. How long it takes to get back. So it'll go up for Dinah Festival. So depending on the complexity of setting it up, we're going to try to get as close to Dinah Festival as possible, but we don't want people working 24 hours trying to last minute set it up. So, but it will go in the Hall of Ancient Life. It's not a dinosaur, obviously, but Dinosaur Festival has included various paleontology displays, and it's always been well received, whether it's different things from Ice Age, Pleistocene. So, yeah.
One thing on the advancement report, can you talk about corporate giving? If you've seen any changes, either up or down, due to economic uncertainty or other factors that have impacted corporate giving so far this year?
We have seen that some of our regular and longtime supporters are asking for more options at this point. So in other words, if they've given traditionally at a certain level, they're asking for different options because they're facing various questions, economic questions. So far the giving has been strong, but we have seen more requests for lower options. So it may mean that if we want to do the same things that we do, maybe it means 10 gifts instead of 7, and keep pushing aggressively. But we have seen that.
And I just wanted to chime in and say it's not related solely to this museum.
No, it is the reality. We're going to keep pushing to meet the mission.
Next, corporations absolutely despise uncertainty.
Don't we all?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Unnecessary uncertainty.
Dr. Evans.
Yes. I I just want to call everyone's attention to the full minutes from our previous meeting that are part of our packet. And you'll note that it includes among the very detailed, as always, report from each curator as to what they're doing in publications that are out, in progress, collaborations, working with the exhibits or education staff, field work, everything. It's all there. And again, I'm always impressed with just how productive all our people are. It makes my little tiny brain spin, but I'm very happy with that, and it makes me proud to be part of this institution. I also want to thank the curatorial staff for putting together a detailed report. See if I can find the right page. It's got colors, so I should be able to find it quickly. Put together a detailed analysis of the existing collection, still going, a collections assessment that looks at the collections in hand and characterizes each group of collections, whether they're stored in fluids or and so on, with an eye toward space needs. Are these collections that will be expanding soon? Can that be predicted? Are there collections that could be moved over to the Douglas Avenue facility? There's a lot of balls in the air, collections in the air, if you will. I still can't find it. I'm still scrolling. Oh, and I came to the end too late. I completely missed it. Anyway, please refer to the collections assessment, because that clearly points out that two of our departments, paleontology and archaeology, are out of space. So it's their collections, or a portion thereof, that are going to be considered for moving over to Douglas Avenue when that space has been prepared. And there's also a floor plan for Douglas Avenue that now the spaces there on both floors are numbered. And in our joint meeting with the facilities committee meeting last week, Marshall pointed out to us that some of these spaces have already been allocated. In other words, people are looking at utilizing these spaces right away once they become ready. So I'm hoping that there'll be another document coming shortly with a key identifying these rooms and the spaces and their allocation, or at least planned allocation. And I think that will help us all visualize how the spaces are going to be used, how we can sort of prioritize the development of spaces, and help us plan for the scope of work that we're doing with the architect to come up with a plan for bringing the entire building up to speed. And this will be the next step, of course, is that there's a 60% benchmark that the architect will meet. It's sort of coming together with all these plans and working with museum staff and these key committees. Then we can begin signing off on different elements of this scope of work. And I will always defer to Tom Benzig to chime in here, because like I say, I've said it multiple times, he's much more adept at explaining these things than I am. But that's the short of it. And for those of you that are on the facilities committee or research and collections committee, please stay tuned for potential Zoom meetings, joint Zoom meetings coming up. These are really interesting meetings, and I find them to be very productive, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Let's see. Also at today's meeting, very lively as always. I try to get through the action items as quickly as possible, so we have plenty of time for discussion. And we looked at the section of Museum Without Walls, the research and collections elements, and just to discuss very briefly, including in that proposal, our strategic initiatives, new full-time position, including the Douglas Avenue rehab, and also making an effort to connect research and collections with the strengths that currently exist in research and collections with contemporary issues, making it easier for us to sell what we do to various legislative bodies to encourage them to support the museum. Joe brought up, once again, I admit it did slip off my radar, that we had discussed in the last strategic plan centers of excellence, and this is a really good time to revisit that now because we have more curators on board, and this is a chance for us to sort of repackage what we're already doing and making it more digestible to a non-museum audience, to a legislative audience, to get a clearer idea of how what we do will have a direct impact on current events and the citizens of Virginia. Another thing that came up was there at some point will be a naming opportunity for Douglas Avenue. There was some discussion about, we keep referring it to Douglas Avenue, but at some time soon it will be so much more. So that's something we can be thinking about. The state is committed to bringing up Douglas Avenue to its state as of 2006, but that doesn't address some of the other ideas that we've had for that space, including a few apartments for visiting researchers and that kind of thing. We'll have to go outside for funding that, anything beyond what the building was in 2006. So this presents us with an opportunity to go out in the community and see if there are corporations or individuals that are interested in making a major contribution to these developments, and therefore there would be a possibility to apply their name to the building. And so as we go along, we'll begin looking at these additional projects and getting an idea of what the budget might be, and then we can start formulating a more formal ask so people can see what those opportunities might be. And just to wrap this up, there'll be an announcement for an assistant curator position in herpetology in August. As you know, we have a recent vacancy there, and Dr. Adam Pritchard was recently promoted to associate curator, which is a real milestone for him and for us here at the museum. And just in today's discussion with Dr. Boaz, I was unaware of these outside collections. And so I'd like to, I don't know how that's going to play out. Again, there's lots of moving parts here, but I think that these elements need to be part of our plans going forward and looking at museum expansion in Douglas Avenue and so on, because I would hate to see these collections be lost. And this sort of thing happens all the time. And the fact that Dr. Boaz has gone to such efforts to document the existence of these collections and the heritage of these collections, I think it's really important to get this information out to us as soon as possible, and to the legislature as soon as possible. One thing that can be said for the Virginia legislature is that they're very much aware of their history. And I think if we can play to the historic importance of, excuse me, of these collections, that will be in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's a nice transition to Dr. Bentley.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to be brief with the facilities report. There is a agenda or minutes in your packet, so you can take a look at that. But since our February 1 meeting, as Art already alluded to, we had the joint meeting with Research and Collections, and today we had another meeting. There are basically three, it's a very active committee right now. There are three ongoing projects, with Douglas Avenue being the most significant one, I would say, and we're awaiting a report on asbestos and lead abatement. And hopefully that will move us forward in the next week or so. I thought, like Art did, that the joint meeting was very productive and will continue to facilitate communications among research and collections staff and the facilities folks on staff. Starling Avenue, of course, one of the things that's exciting is the pavilion. Hopefully we'll have a hanging of the Pelagornis and ribbon cutting, as you heard from Brian already. We have the Young Explorer Center, and I understand there's been a request for some funds from both state and federal legislators. The maintenance of the driveway has been repaired, and I think it's been resealed now. And then the third facility is the outreach trailer that we have in Waynesboro. We are working to get that upgraded and rewrapped expeditiously, but it will be open for the museum rodeo, which is being held here in Waynesboro this weekend. So several museums are represented, and we will be among those. So I think that's as brief as I can be about facilities, unless there's any questions.
Okay. Moving on to Waynesboro Advocacy Committee.
Yes, and I do want to note that there are a couple of sets of minutes in there. We have met pretty much monthly on the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee. I want to express my thanks, as Jonathan did, for the letter writing that people have done. I think that campaign is getting the word out there, and I'm glad to hear that there was a remark about the variety of stakeholders who were represented. We are hopeful. I remain hopeful that we'll be in the governor's proposed budget. The timeline would look like this then. That would come out in December of this year, and then it would go through the General Assembly process and hopefully be approved May of next year, so about a year from now. And then we would be having golden shovels in hand in July of next year. So that's the hopeful timeline. We are nearing the,
what's the request, the budget request amount, if I may ask?
we will know exact numbers. I don't know, Jonathan, have we gotten that yet? I know it's the neighborhood of $20 million, but.
So yes, construction, roughly $20 million. We do have a new cost estimate from Wabe & Homes, which we received in between the two meetings, right around $20 million. And there's another roughly $10–12 million in additional costs to AE firm, exhibits, et cetera, in a separate bucket. So 32 million is probably going to be the top number.
And out of that, how much, out of the 32 million, how much are you all anticipating will be in the 2026 budget, state budget? All 32, or?
So the the process starts again, right? So we'll get the funding for working drawings fiscal year 2027. So working drawings
27.
So that'll be roughly $3 million, and that's riding on moving from detailed design to the bucket that's into capital construction. Means that the funding will be available to us as the process goes along. So and that number 32 million is going to be 36 million because of inflation, or 38. So that at the beginning of 2027, we will have access to the funds to do the working drawings, and then post working drawing approval through DEV and all the powers of the state, the funds will be available to be allocated following that.
Got it. Thank you.
And we fully expect that the state is going to fund all that. With the city and the foundation has committed further funds as a match. That'll be in addition to that.
And the only other thing that I have to report is that as a result of a conversation in our most recent Waynesboro Advisory Committee meeting, we decided that we needed some extra funds, and Carol and I wrote a request to the VMNH Foundation Finance Committee to pay those funds from our Waynesboro account, as well as some other sources, and maybe Jonathan can provide details if that's of interest, but it basically would close out our detailed design costs.
Yeah, we had some shortfalls from the get-go, and I mean this we were open about this. Basically, the calculations for how much we should have got to start detailed design were not accurate. We received 1.14 million. It probably should have been higher than that. So the other thing too, with everything in terms of delays in receiving funding, the cost of actually doing the work escalated. So we've asked the foundation to utilize two sources of funds. One is the Waynesboro account, which we've raised funds to do that work in Waynesboro anyway. The second is to close out some accounts in the foundation that are for past projects we completed under budget. So it's around 50 some thousand out of the Waynesboro account, about 23 or so thousand out of the closed accounts, and then we would pay for the remainder with some of our revenues. And so that will equate to about $50,000. Sorry, $150,000 to finish out detailed design.
And that's all I have.
Thank you for your continued monthly meetings and support in Waynesboro, and for you and Art coming together and combining committees. Just because things have been done a certain way doesn't mean that's the way they should always be done. So we can certainly meet as often as needed to get the work done. So thank you. Nathan, education.
Yes, Lauren and Christy and Jennifer and I had a lovely meeting downstairs this morning. Despite a dip in the numbers in Q1, the demand remains high for Christy's team's educational programming. This has been referenced a couple of times earlier, but Q1 was kind of an anomaly with staffing. Christy was bringing on a new educator. There was some training and job shadowing happening. And then there was a bunch of inclement weather, which also prevented some programs from happening, whether that be at the schools or here at the museum. They're planning at least 3 months out for programming. So, if somebody picks up the phone and says, hey, can you give me a program tomorrow? Sorry, we're booked. So especially some of the fun stuff like sleepovers, they continue to grow in popularity. That's the kind of thing that captures my imagination, with the numbers there continuing to grow. Christy has a meeting, I think she said next month, with a either retired or retiring educator in the Waynesboro area, Rosemary Wagner, as a potential possible new part-time educator. So again, the program grows. And just a quick, really nice note, after a recent visit, Christy received a lovely note from Franklin County High School Adaptive Education Program, just singing her praises and also mentioning that the museum space here is very accessible for their students. So we're talking about students who use mobility devices, might be in a wheelchair or a scooter, or have issues with vision, and they were able to have a really nice visit. They passed those things along to Christy. So it was a good meeting, and lots of good stuff happened.
Are you interested in developing adult sleepovers? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's kind of been in the news lately.
I have a question. I'm still new at this, but I saw in your chart there was a section for distance learning. Is there a future plan for that?
I'll defer this to Christy, but what I know about it is the distance learning was getting used a lot during the pandemic. And then once they went back to school in person, the appetite for that went way down. They wanted to get the kids away from the screens. They wanted somebody either physically in the classroom, or they wanted to have the students physically here at the museum. So it was something that we discussed. It's certainly something we continue to offer. It just doesn't seem like the appetite is there for it right now.
Okay. There could be distance learning for adults too, I suppose.
Christy, why don't you talk about you've done work with libraries and more than just your traditional classroom, Dave.
Yes. So there is potential audiences, even audiences such as assisted care facilities with adult populations. One of our Charlottesville educators does a lot of programming with adult audiences in the area. And so that was something that we talked about in our committee meeting this morning of, connecting virtually to the museum, having a virtual visit with various populations. So, and like Nathan mentioned, it's still an option that is on the table. And it's just, it's not as widely selected as our in-person programming, but definitely still something that's available with various audiences.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan, did you have anything else?
That's it for me, unless I missed anything, guys. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Christy, as well. Joe referenced strategic plan, and the committee continues to meet, and we have a 2-page overview that has some updates, and Joe is going to just reference some of those specific items. And as mentioned, this is not the strategic plan with the goals and the ways to measure, but the guiding principles, so to speak.
All right, so I'm going to try to walk through them briefly just to save time. If we start with the first section, research and collections as core priorities. We had some discussion this morning that we would have a request for a new FTE on the sheet. It says 4 research and collections annually. However, as we had discussion, there may be opportunity to request positions such as a fabricator that would be partly associated with research and collection. So we want to remain agile with these requests. We've talked about Douglas Avenue, and as Art mentioned, this connecting research and collections to contemporary issues in a rapidly changing world. I think we have some examples of what we're doing. This is more of a repackaging of what we do to try to better engage the public in the scientific work. So as we talked about this morning, species discovery is a really cool thing, but it's maybe for some audiences abstract. You know, what does that mean exactly? But if we talk about species loss and recovery, that might be a way in which we can better package that. CHML is a great example of work in the contemporary world with natural disasters and armed conflict as it relates to cultural resources. We need to be creative and look at some of the other areas of our work and how we package it. Educational impact and relevance. We're going to be doing a lot with the VA250, as Ryan had already discussed, since we have to do it as like a part of the plan, right? And so we're having a lot of fun putting it together, and so we'll have more on that. Cross-departmental work can be part of our plan, especially when it comes to creating storylines and compelling narratives. And that gets back to connecting to this concept under R&C with connecting to contemporary issues. Media connections, social influences, there's going to be some opportunity there. One thing we're talking about in-house that I'll particularly point out is the 5 C's of storytelling. This is just a method to turn your topic. I mean, we can just put up a vanilla description of what photosynthesis is, but what can we tell a story about it? That would make a more compelling and more memorable experience. So we're going to set some goals for that. Look at long-term vision and growth, physical and digital expansion. That's, of course, we have to continue some of these projects we've been working on, such as VMNH Waynesboro, use of the outreach trailer there, the future of Wilson Park and our connections now that we've got the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion coming online, possible use of other off-site facilities that we may acquire. We've talked a little about that in the past. We need to, again, remain agile as opportunity arises. And as Christy's already doing, we learned just a couple minutes ago the expansion of our residential educators in other cities. One thing that we would like to put into our long-term plans for upgrades in our exhibits, because I mean, let's face it, our permanent exhibits are coming up on 2 decades old, so while we kind of modify some things, add and delete things, and so forth, that volcano that's never really worked properly, right, has been there for 20 years. So we have opportunity to update these things. And certainly our team led by Bethany Fisher is eager to get to that. And we've talked a little bit, not a lot, about the idea of the concept, beginning the concept of discussion of long-term vision of a wing. And that's something we're looking to you for guidance from the standpoint of how do you want to handle that? Do you want to put together an ad hoc committee, right? Or do you want to work on it all together? How is that structure going to look? And that's something we can maybe perhaps handle in an upcoming executive committee meeting to start and bring it as a full forward discussion. And another thing we need to really start to think about is the last 2 sub-bullet points, the infrastructure, right? So we have to admit that whatever we put into this can't just be the great exhibit galleries and collection spaces and so forth. There has to be infrastructure, your HVAC, restaurants, hallways, janitorial, everything you don't like to talk about that you have to have. And then lastly, it's also a time to be creative. We don't have to just follow the mold that we've been working with or other museums working with. Some things that have come up in just staff discussions, for instance, is what if we had a dedicated media lab, right, that we grew our in-house capabilities with. And as we've talked about before, the possibility in some capacity of having visiting colleague dorms or apartments, maybe the new building wing could assist with that. Also going to, in my way of thinking, we need some outside help too. So we're going to have to find a way to dedicate some money. If you said, Joe, where are we going to put a wing? First thing that comes to mind, I mean, when I look at the property, I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense to go towards Starling Avenue, maybe from the library windows where the flagpoles are, right? But architects think differently, and they might look at it and say that's totally disadvantageous for these things you're not thinking about, but you should really build out the plaza. And they think that sounds like an impossible job for me, for a talented architect. We don't have to contract a full project like going through detailed design or pre-planning, but we need to get some advice, and they can look at things like that and give us some proper direction. I'm not going to say a lot about financial sustainability and diversification because it all just makes sense with the endowment, with the broadening of our public engagement through Museums for All, the Young Explorers Center, perhaps doing things like expanding behind the scenes offerings and so forth. And again, being creative. How do we want to use the Gene S. Adams Education Pavilion? Obviously, it's going to be Christie's gateway to Wilson Park and outdoor education. That's obvious. But we also have rental opportunities. Are there other ways in which we can use a three-season area such as the pavilion? Human capital and institutional standards. Obviously, we have AAM results coming up, and so that is something we have to look forward to in terms of this step. Leadership succession planning, that's always important, and attracting and supporting the highest quality staff and board members, right? That should be done strategically as well. And I think this one step in terms of targeting our lowest paid employees to get them sort of closer to where they should be is a good first step. But I think strategically we need to do that so we can recruit and retain the best people. And then stronger boards working together, staff will do everything that you ask it to do in terms of your engagement with making requests to the foundation board, and that foundation board staying up to speed on what the museum needs are. And one thing that we're doing right now, and we do have an asset on the foundation board, from the standpoint that we're examining board meeting format to increase board members' strategic engagement. One of our board members is Jennifer Thomas. I'm going to communicate with her. She actually attended the strategic planning meeting and is kind of chomping at the bit to help. And so when she was director of the Virginia Association of Museums, she ran board meetings differently than the way we run things here. So we're going to put heads together and try to kind of cross-pollinate different ideas to come up with something that will meet the board's needs. So that's my whirlwind presentation of our strategic planning preparation document. I'll push it back to you, Helen.
Thank you, Joe. Any feedback, questions for Joe?
It's exciting.
Yeah, it always is, this idea of launching a new plan, and so the idea is, of course, this is 25 through 30, slightly delayed from past plans because we want to wait for the AAM input, but Ryan's got a calendar already set up for when final drafts go in and when the document goes to the printer.
Sorry, the foundation has budgeted funding to produce whatever document results from it, whether it's a booklet or fold out or whatever. So thanks to the foundation for that.
What an important piece to have for fundraising.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, didn't do a fancy one this time around because we released it just as the pandemic kind of hit home. So it'll be nice to be able to do that again.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we approve a resolution of appreciation for Ann Burnett. There's a second.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So, it's sad to see folks go. This is a resolution of appreciation for Ann Burnett, whereas Miss Ann Burnett served on the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History from 2020 through 2025. Whereas Ms. Burnett shared her extensive knowledge of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Whereas Ms. Burnett served faithfully on the museum's finance and development and marketing committees. Whereas Ms. Burnett advocated for the museum in both the General Assembly and across the Commonwealth. Whereas Ms. Burnett contributed to strategic planning for the museum, ensuring an ambitious agenda ahead. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History hereby express its appreciation, admiration for Ms. Ann Burnett's leadership and dedication to the museum's board, and look forward to her continued connection to the mission of the museum. Done the 17th day of May, 2025 in Martinsville, Virginia, by unanimous vote of the Board of Trustees of Virginia Museum of Natural History. I make a motion to approve a resolution of appreciation for 10 years of service for Fort Cochran. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 10 years, wow.
Feels just like yesterday.
Whereas Mr. Fort Cochran served on the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History from 2015 to 2025. Whereas Mr. Cochran worked tirelessly to ensure Virginia Museum of Natural History engaged its mission to interpret Virginia's natural heritage within a global context in ways that are relevant to all citizens of the Commonwealth. Whereas Mr. Cochran served faithfully as the board's treasurer for 4 years and served on the museum's executive and facilities committees. Whereas Mr. Cochran advocated for the museum in both the General Assembly and across the Commonwealth. Whereas Mr. Cochran contributed to strategic planning for the museum, ensuring an ambitious agenda ahead. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History hereby express its appreciation and admiration for Mr. Fort Cochran's leadership and dedication to the museum's board, and look forward to his continued connection to the mission of the museum, done the 17th day of May, 2025 in Martinsville, Virginia, by unanimous vote of the trustees.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we approve a resolution of appreciation for 10 years of service for Jennifer Burnett. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we will present that to Jennifer. I'd like to make a motion that we approve a resolution of appreciation for Mark Buss. Is there a second?
Second.
Any, all approve, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And I would like to share this, we will be sharing this with his family. Resolution of appreciation for Mark Buss. Whereas Mr. Mark Buss was appointed to the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History in May of 2021. Whereas Mr. Buss served as chairman of the Board of Trustees from July 2024 to March 2025. Whereas Mr. Buss led the Strategic Planning Committee, which included the preparations for the forthcoming 5-year plan for Virginia Museum of Natural History. Whereas Mr. Buss frequently gave expert advice for navigating the nuances of state government and was a wealth of information about business and nonprofit management. Whereas Mr. Buss was an enthusiastic advocate for the Virginia Museum of Natural History across the Commonwealth. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Virginia Museum of Natural History hereby note with great sadness the loss of Mr. Buss, whose valued contributions during his service as trustee and past board chairman of the Virginia Museum of Natural History will be sorely missed, and be it resolved further that the Secretary of the Board of Trustees prepare a copy of this resolution for presentation to the family of Mr. Buss as an expression of the Virginia Museum of Natural History's respect for his memory, done the 17th day of May 2025.
Nicely done.
And it has been shared, and if it's okay to reshare, there is an upcoming opportunity for folks to attend.
It's July 11th in Richmond. It's early afternoon, but I'll send the details out again.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for going to that as well.
Yes.
Upcoming Dino Festival, July 25th and 26th. Ryan, you could update me, but if you are available to participate, obviously to attend the Great Coach, great. But if you would like to help, that is not help all day 25th and 26th, you can just let Ryan know if you'd be willing to come either day or both, then you're not going to be stuck at a table for the whole day. And one thing that you can certainly do would be just to give staff time to grab a bite, do things, and just be an extra set of hands.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No, I think it's whatever time, and if it's just visiting, that's great too. But it is a different look at the museum. If you haven't been to one before, it's definitely worth experiencing. It's great.
It was nice to hear the kids earlier. You kind of, first I was like, what is that? I thought it's a museum. Opposite, leave the door open, please.
Sound like a happy customer.
And thank you to Jennifer. The upcoming events, that's the last page, page 129, of other things that are coming up and opportunities to participate. Dave and Tom, thank you for participating virtually. We appreciate it. Folks that are here, thank you as well. And the staff, I think it's 35, it's less than 40. Thanks for all the daily hustle of being here on Saturday and all that you do to make us look great. And I'd like to see if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second.
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. There we go. Any votes? All right, I think we have lunch next door.
Thank you.
Jennifer,
So long.
Thinking that you probably want this.
Oh, the Dino Festival. Yeah, I was